Hello and welcome to Special Stage 7, Rally Sport Magazine's Special Stage podcast. I'm Luke Whitten, and today we're going to be chatting about a whole lot of things in the rally world, and we can't go any further without sending our condolences across to Craig Breen's family and friends and all those who knew him. We'll reflect on our memories of Craig Breen as well as a whole heap of other stuff about his career through this podcast, and hopefully we'll have a chat with a special guest at the end as well. So, Peter Whitten, how are you this morning?
Yeah, I'm going really well, thank you, Luke. It's been a sad week in the world of rallying, that's for sure.
It is. It's hard to know whether it's sunk in yet, whether it will sink in, or how you're going to react to a set of news that comes across when you see it. I guess for me, I woke up to the news and you were the same. And yeah, it's hard to know what to react with and what to do. And did you have any initial thoughts on your reaction?
Yeah, I was like you, Luke, and just shocked at the news. We all expect that rally cars crash and that fatalities are a possibility whenever somebody's out competing. But for a WRC driver in a Rally 1 car, you just never expect it to happen. So, yeah, just left dumbfounded.
And you can see the reaction across social media, of course, and everybody's feeling in the same boat. And it's really when the true rally community stands up and comes together in memory of Craig. And yeah, it shows the strength of the family that is rallying.
Yeah, you're right. And I remember similar outpourings of grief when Possum Bourne passed away 20 years ago, when Colin McRae died in the helicopter accident. I mean, there were massive funerals. There was huge outpourings of grief. And of course, back then, social media wasn't what it is today. So we didn't have as much information and as much outpouring as what we've seen with Craig's death. But it happens, I suppose, all too frequently, even though it's not that often. So it is really hard. And as you said, Luke, we certainly send out our prayers and condolences to Craig's family and teammates and friends and everybody who knew him.
Now, there's a lot of people who know Craig and who are going to speak clearly about Craig's life, and we're not going to try and act as though we knew Craig. I didn't meet Craig. I don't think you met him either, Peter, but we're going to just sort of cover off on a couple of things in Australia, because he came to Rally Australia twice and I believe had some family in Perth as well. So he had a little bit of a connection to Australia and the times at Rally Australia when he was here in the Citroen. It was, great to see his smiling face in the service park, and you knew that he had the talent, but unfortunately in those Citroens, it was never really with too much speed.
No, it wasn't, but he did show some incredible pace in those cars, and obviously he got a podium place at Rally Finland in the Citroen. So anybody who gets that level of success at Rally Finland is a seriously fast driver. And I think in the last couple of days or the last few days, we've seen a lot of the video footage that's been put up on YouTube, and watching Craig on some of those fast stages through Rally Finland, Rally Estonia, those sorts of roads, he was seriously fast. And the fact that he never did win a round of the World Rally Championship is very sad, because he certainly had the ability.
He sure did. And the last event that he did compete on, Rally Sweden, that was arguably his closest chance. And if it wasn't for a tyre issue on that second day, he may well have taken the fight to Oit and got that win.
He may well have, yeah. And it's quite ironic, isn't it, that the two guys had swapped teams, whereas Craig was with M Sport Ford last year and Oit was with Hyundai, and they swapped drives, and they were fighting for the win. So yeah, it was fantastic. And I think the thing that always came across with Craig is that he loved rallying more than life itself. And his end of stage interviews, whether he was going well or whether he was going badly, was edge of your seat viewing.
Yeah, it was. It was always good to see him at the stage end, because more often than not, he did have a smile on his face. Maybe spare the M Sport stuff aside for a bit, because he wasn't smiling all that often last year, but it's so great that we were able to see him in Sweden with that big smile across his face again, and we were able to get some really great stage end interviews, which is you would have seen hundreds of times since his passing.
Yeah, they were great, and as we said, like, he was so emotional, whether it be with happiness or sadness, and that really what made Craig Breen what he was. Because I mean, there's so many of the drivers who, at the end of the stages, they give I guess the team line where they give the comment that the media expect them to give, and they don't give any more or any less than that. So the fact that Craig was quite emotional and was more than willing to tell things how they were was really what set him apart from other drivers.
One thing stands out as well for me was that WRC Academy win in 2011 and the mammoth effort that he had to do to win at Wales Rally GB at the end of the year to clinch the title. There's an Australian link there as well. Obviously, Brendan Reeves and Molly Taylor competed in that same season against Craig Breen, and they would have some amazing memories of a young Craig Breen. And I guess those two Aussies were young as well at that point. They would have some great memories of competing against Craig, and I'm sure they would anecdotally say that, yeah, they knew he had the talent based on the speed.
I think you're right, yeah, and I think Craig too. He had the opportunities as well. Molly and Brendan, they certainly could quite easily have done what Craig Breen has done over his career, but Craig was based obviously in the UK and Ireland, and had the opportunities probably more so through funding and sponsorship and all other areas as well. But yeah, Molly and Brendan would have some wonderful stories, and let's hope we can catch up with them in the future to relive some of those.
Were you surprised, Peter, with Hyundai continuing at Rally Croatia this weekend with their two cars? They're going to run a tribute livery, which we've seen sort of part of as we record this podcast. It looks really, really good on the cars. Are you surprised that they're running at all?
Yes and no, I guess, Luke. It is a really difficult one for the team, isn't it? I mean, everybody in that team will be suffering emotionally from what has gone on over the past week. Yeah, we know that Craig would want the team to carry on and compete this weekend, and of course that's what they're going to do with two cars. But it can't have been easy. Hyundai is a manufacturer; they're in the championship to win the manufacturers' championship. So, on one hand, they have a commitment there, but everybody knows that if they had have pulled the pin and said no, we can't physically go and compete this weekend, I'm sure everybody would have understood that situation as well.
And you sent me a photo just before as well with Craig Breen's car sitting there in the third service bay, which will be a good tribute throughout the weekend to have his car there in those Hyundai colours.
Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? Obviously, the car was prepared and ready to go this weekend, and for the team to have that on display, it's probably as much a tribute to Craig from the team as it is for the fans who are going to be at the rally, because I'm sure Craig's name will still adorn the Hyundai service tents and all that sort of stuff, and the fans will be sort of gathering around that to pay tribute, I'm sure.
Yeah, totally.
One last thing on the whole Craig Breen situation, Luke, is I want to send out, I guess, our thoughts to all the WRC media that are working this weekend and over the past week. It's always really difficult in situations like this, because the Bex Williamses, the Colin Clarks, all those key people in the WRC media who knew Craig really well, they're grieving as well, and they've got to continue with their work, particularly over the last week. They've got to write stories, they've got to do reports, all that sort of stuff, and it's very difficult for them. And I just want to send out our thoughts to them and say, well done on fantastic work over the past week, and yeah, we're thinking of you too.
I agree. Well put. Looking back on some Australian content that we've had on Rally Sport Magazine, there's been a state event last weekend. Brendan Reeves took the chocolates at the Ada River Rally, which was in the eastern side of Victoria. It's sort of near the old Rally Victoria roads, near Warrigal and the like. And I saw a photo or a video which I remember being on a corner at those 2010, 2011 Australian Rally Championship events. Peter, it was an interesting rally. There was some attrition there too, but a two-wheel drive car to win a state round, it's not all that often we see that these days.
No, it's not. But I guess certainly with Brendan and that Datsun 1600 that he spent a lot of time and money on, it's not surprising that he eventually got a state round win. It's a rally down there, the Ada River, which the roads are fantastic. It's a real driver's rally. Darren Windus was looking like he was going to win the event in the Ford Fiesta G4 that Aaron drove last year. He won the first heat, but obviously retired in the second heat with I think a turbo pipe came off the car. And also Tim Clark, who won the opening round, was set for victory, then had brake troubles in the last stage. So that enabled Brendan to win, but good on him. It's been a long time coming in that car.
Second overall finisher behind Brendan Reeves was Justin Dowell in another Ford Fiesta G4. This G4 car had Mitsubishi running gears, so it's chalk and cheese between the two of them. But to see Justin in the seat, obviously we talk a lot about Troy, who's doing great things in the ARC at the minute. The former champion Justin, he was back in there and looked to be back on the pace.
He did, yeah, yeah. It's, as you say, it's good to see Justin back out there, and it's what is it now? 12 years since he won the ARC in 2011. So he's obviously been doing lots of team management sort of stuff with Active Rally Sport over the past few years, and running cars and the team there. So for him to get back in the seat's a great thing.
That's right. In the last couple of days as well, we've had the announcement of Taylor Gill's FIA Rally Star calendar. So he'll be going to places like Austria, Slovenia, Estonia, Spain, and Germany, all as part of his 6-round campaign. And I know Taylor's been chomping at the bit to actually find out what his events are. And now that he's been able to do that, I'm sure he's even more eager, if that's even possible, Peter.
It's quite extraordinary, isn't it? What are we in the 19th of April when we're recording this, and he's only just found out the calendar. So it's been a long, long wait for Taylor and all the other FIA Rally Star finalists. But yeah, it'll be good to see them out there. And Taylor's already had a drive of a Fiesta Rally 3 car on sort of snow and ice, and loved it. So he's champing it a bit. And this weekend he's in Croatia having a look at the rally as well. So should be great.
And announcing as well for Taylor Gill is a couple of sponsors who've come on board. So Richie Dalton, Shamrock Haulage, and Daniel Gonzalez's Realty Lane have jumped on board, which I think is great, because when Australians go overseas and chase their dream, like the Brendan Reeves and like the Molly Taylors that we mentioned earlier, it's sometimes difficult to get sponsors over there. But to have those two guys who have been heavily involved in the ARC supporting an Australian that goes overseas, I think is a great thing, because you've got to find a budget from somewhere and be able to help yourself and live over there comfortably. And for Taylor to get those sponsors is pretty important. And I think it's really great to see.
Oh, absolutely. And good on those guys for putting their hand in their pocket. I mean, we've got to remember that this is really a once in a lifetime opportunity for Taylor. And this could be the dream of an Australian getting back into the World Rally Championship. And yeah, look, it's a fantastic opportunity, as I say. And if there's any other business people out there who might be able to spare some money to send Taylor's way to try and help him along and make sure that he can do everything within his power to win the FIA Rally Star this year, then please do so, because Australian rallying would be much appreciative.
Sebastian Loeb's been announced as a Lancia driver in the FIA World Rallycross Championship. Peter, were you thinking anything like that would ever happen? Sebastian Loeb in an electric Lancia at that?
Well, I grew up in the Lancia era, I guess, of the 1990s, when the Delta was the car to beat in all formats, whether it be Group B or Group A. And to see the Lancia name back again is fantastic. But yeah, I certainly didn't expect an electric Lancia in the Rallycross. I was expecting maybe Sebastian Loeb to do some events for M Sport this year in the WRC, but that doesn't look like it's going to happen.
No, it doesn't. And there's a few date clashes with the World Rallycross and the World Rally Championship calendar. It's not expected that Loeb will do a huge number of World Rallies towards the end of the season, but I reckon this full calendar for him in the Rallycross means it's almost zero chance of him competing in the WRC this season, which is unfortunate. But then again, it highlights how focused M Sport are on preparing a car that's right for Oit Tanak to get him the driver's title. So it's sort of a shift in focus for M Sport.
Yeah, I think that's right. And last year, when Craig Breen and Adrian Formeau and Gus Greensmith were the drivers, I guess they didn't have that number one winning driver like a Tanak or a Neuville or an Ogier. So they needed to bring in Loeb on the occasion to try and get those results. It worked in Monte Carlo. It didn't work in other events because the car failed or Loeb put it off the road. But as you say, this year M Sport, all their focus has gone on to developing that car for Oit Tanak as the man who can win the championship. And obviously, yeah, that's where their focus is.
That's right. And so Sebastian Loeb, as I say, we're back in the World Rallycross if you've got a WRC Plus subscription, you'll be able to watch the Rallycross if that's what you're into and you're wanting some more sideways content. So have a look at that. Loeb does have experience at Rallycross, so he did a few years there after he retired from the WRC. So you never know, he might be able to grab another world title. The Rally of the Heartland is on next weekend in South Australia. It's building in stature year on year, and it's got some great scenery that's really in the middle of outback Australia. You've been sort of in that area before, Peter, and we're going to be over there for the event. It's just a special place, isn't it?
It is. It's based out of Burra, which is a couple of hours north of Adelaide, and it's wonderful country. As you say, it's really outback country. It's not traditional forest rallying. Most of us have probably seen photos and things from previous Rally of the Heartlands. The event didn't run last year because of wet weather, but they've got over 60 entries this year, headed by Nathan Quinn in his Mazda RX-2. But there's four drives, there's all sorts of cars entered, so it's going to be a wonderful event again.
Yeah, it's going to be a great spectacle. And I think the different nature of those stages being, well, first of all, they're fast. And then in the middle of the outback there, it provides a scene that is uniquely Australian. And who knows, that event is got some good backing behind it, and it might grow year on year to a point where it's similar to a Rally Otago as it gets internationals to it, because people wanting to come and compete in international events, they don't want to go and compete in a forest that they might be able to compete in Italy or Portugal or that sort of stuff. They come to Australia to compete in an Australian event, which of course they're all Australian events, but the unique Australian nature of these stages could be a real pull for competitors, whether it be from the East Coast, from Perth, or even from overseas.
Oh, you're totally right, and obviously we've seen in some of the lead up videos on social media that Colin Clark was out here for a couple of days, a couple of months ago, doing some preview stuff for Rally of the Heartland. He'll be back for the event. We'll be working with him over the 3 or 4 days of the rally, which we're really looking forward to. But Colin has said straight out of the box that this is Australian rallying. Like, this is what people want to see. So yeah, if we get events like the Alpine, which is obviously a very traditional event, but events like the Rally of the Heartland, given that they're held in outback sort of areas, they could be a really big pull for overseas competitors in the future.
That's right, and it all takes the organisers and the promotional aspect of the sport being very committed in growing the sport and making it accessible for everybody wherever they are in the world. You mentioned to me just before we jumped on the podcast, Peter, that you've spoken to Eddie Maguire and maybe some ARC news for the Forest Rally.
Yeah, it's fantastic news. Eddie, as people might remember, competed at Rally Launceston last month in a Subaru. Unfortunately, was excluded after the event for an engine malady, which was outside his doing. It was a car that he just jumped in at the last minute, but he's managed to get another Subaru Impreza organised for the Forest Rally in WA next month. It's the Craig Brooks Subaru that Molly Taylor last drove, I think, in an ARC round in 2021, run by Orange Motorsport. So that'll be fantastic to see Eddie over there in a car. He was initially looking at an R5 car through Race Talk to maybe compete in that event, but there wasn't one available. But he's actually going to drive the Subaru. His brother Stephen's going over there as well. He'll take his Mitsubishi Lancer as well. Have Dale Moscott in the co-driver's seat. So yeah, it's great. And Eddie just said that he's hoping to do all the rounds this year in some form. Doesn't know what car in what car yet, but he wants to get the experience of the events so that next year he can have a full attack on the ARC.
That full attack next year might be in a quicker car, because I'm not sure why you would do a full season of the ARC in a production car and then not move up into a faster car the year later. Did he mention anything about a Rally 2 car or something like that for 24?
Yeah, he did. He mentioned that his goal is to do a full season in an R5 car or a Rally 2 car at some stage. Hopefully that'll be next year. There was also some talk that maybe there could be a 2-car team with his brother next year. So it's an exciting time for Eddie. And Craig Brooks, I spoke to him as well, and he's incredibly excited about the opportunity to have Eddie drive his car. And Craig actually made the offer to Eddie. It wasn't the other way around. Craig said, here's my car, go and drive it. So wonderful opportunity. And as we know, Eddie's a 2-time Targa Tasmania winner as well. So he's got much talent behind the wheel and he'll do very well.
and he loves the gravel, of course, which I'm sure everybody listening to the podcast does. So good to be seeing him on the gravel some more in the ARC this year. You've spoken, obviously, chasing news about Eddie Maguire today, Peter, but you've also chatted with Peggy Bourne over the last week or so with an hour-long chat coming on our Dust Trails podcast, which will be available for our subscribers next week. We'll be doing a couple of specials on Possum Bourne, considering it'll be the 20th anniversary of his passing next week. Did you want to give maybe a bit of an insight into Peggy Bourne's chat and how good it was to
Yeah,
speak to her again?
yeah, and I guess for the younger generation, Peggy was Possum's wife. Obviously, she went through the whole grief situation, and she spent the last 20 years reliving it, and I guess getting on with her life. And it was I've done a few of these podcast chats now, and I must say it was probably the favourite one I've done because she was so open and welcoming, and it was so good to chat to Peggy again. The day that we chat was the anniversary of Possum's birthday. It was also the anniversary of their wedding anniversary. So it was a real poignant day to chat about Possum over his career and how they met and how they got together. And we didn't talk a lot about rallying. We spoke a lot about Possum the person and the kids and all that sort of stuff. So it was a wonderful chat, and I really encourage people to have a listen to it next week when it comes out.
I often don't look forward to editing podcasts, but maybe this one might be a podcast that I'm looking forward to editing. So looking forward to listening to that one, and make sure if you're not a subscriber, you can jump on and subscribe to Rally Sport Magazine and listen to that when it comes out, probably Thursday or Friday next week. So keep an eye out on the social media and on our website.
For sure, and probably Luke, before we leave today, the last thing is the Otago Rally has already announced their date for next year, and the event was literally only 3 weeks ago. This, I'm sure, is the earliest they've released the date for the following year, but it's going to be run on, I think it's 13th, 14th, and 15th of April next year, which gives competitors, spectators, everybody else plenty of time to organise flights, accommodation, all that sort of stuff. The rally has had incredible interest already from international crews who are wanting to compete next year. Now that COVID's in the rearview mirror, people can look forward to travelling and doing events overseas again. So it's good news from the Otago Rally, and I'm sure it will be oversubscribed once again.
Yeah, that's remarkable that they can get their date out so early. You've run events before yourself and probably events year on year, but yeah, getting a date so early, it must be tough because you've got a lot of
Well,
parties to deal with and stuff like that.
yeah, and the biggest issue normally for events like national championship events is that it's sort of I guess, a domino effect. You've got to wait for the WRC calendar to be announced or the Formula One calendar to be announced, and then the national championships follow that. And so it's always a really difficult thing. Do you wait, or do you come out and go out on a limb and hope that your date fits in with everybody else? But I think after the Otago organisers have chatted to the key stakeholders in Dunedin, other events in Dunedin that maybe clash with the event normally, they've secured this date, and I think rally-wise, they've probably decided that, okay, this is when our date is going to be. You either fit in around that, or just deal with the clash.
That's right. And unlike some other years, we believe there's no real chance of Rally New Zealand coming back next year and no Rally Australia for next year. So it's not like they need to work their whole calendar around a bigger event that might be in New Zealand. So the 13th, 14th, 15th of April, like you say, is the Otago Rally. And yeah, if you want to get over there, head on over. Wrapping up, Peter, our section of Special Stage 7 today. Do you have anything else to add? Any news that you're chasing across the world of Australian or New Zealand rallying?
There's a bit of stuff going on in New Zealand, obviously, with the next round of the National Championship coming up. I know that Ari Pettigrew, the young fella who came second in the first round of the championship in Otago, he's got a few budget constraints at the moment, so they're chasing some extra funding. Obviously, Shane Van Gisbergen is going to be doing some events in Dylan Turner's Audi over the next few months, so we'll be chasing that up as well. And yeah, looking forward again to ARC stuff. We need to chase up the Toyota boys and see how they're preparing for WA next month.
Yep, it'll be a big forest rally next month, which is, only a month away. So it'll come around very, very fast. Peter, thanks so much for your time today. On some not so perfect conditions in terms of remembering Craig Breen, but I'm sure those memories that we've got and those photos that we've all looked back on over the past week will live long in our memory, and of a man who was very important to the WRC and just a great ambassador for the sport.
Yeah, you're right, and I'm certainly looking forward to watching the tributes at Rally Croatia over this weekend as to how the WRC paid tribute to him throughout the whole weekend, which is going to be a tough weekend.
They'll do it in a great manner, I'm sure, and it will be a great tribute. Thanks again for your time. We'll speak to you next week.
Thanks, Luke, and once again, rest in peace, Craig Breen.
Brendo, welcome along. You've had a pretty busy day today. How are you going? You're in the grader at the minute. It's a sunny day in Winterburn.
Yeah, I'm going great, thanks. Not every day you get to sit in rally cars, so it's been good fun. But I just didn't really have enough weekends between now and Perth to train Gandhi, and hadn't had time to sit with him with the late arrival of his Rally 3 Fiesta before Tasmania. But really cool to finally sit with him and see where his skills are at and see the advice that I can give him to help him progress.
Yeah, absolutely. So he's coming along well. It would have been a tough rally in Launceston for him. He had Rihanna alongside him. She would have taught him so much. And then I guess you're continuing on that teaching sort of process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the big thing with Tasmania was Rhiannon got to see quite quickly where his driving was at, and he didn't know the car. So when I got over there, I'm like a mentor for him. I said, look, let's just get through the rally. The worst thing we could do is crash now when there's not many parts of the car.
Yeah.
And with the turnaround, Tasmania to Perth, they're the biggest long haul events, and you want to try and get them both if you can. So he drove really smart, drove with his head. He listens well, didn't get many points, but that wasn't the aim. It was just don't look at times, get through. And the progression from the last stage on Saturday to the first stage on Sunday morning was huge, So Rhiannon did a really good job in the car with him, and active running a new car that they hadn't learnt before. They did a good job as well.
Yeah, that's good. Now I'm interrupting your, I guess you're trying to fix your marks today on your track. So thanks for taking out some time. We're going to chat about Ada River today. Obviously, you won the recent round of the Victorian Rally Championship, and then as well, we're going to chat about Craig Breen and some of your experiences with him over in Europe since obviously the unfortunate news of his passing. First of all, though, Ada River, the Datsun 1600, or Datzilla as you call it, has won a state round. Must have been pretty cool.
It was really cool. I guess you go back and look at what did we set out to do. That wasn't what we set out to do, but the opportunity arose, 2 stages to go, and we were in a really good position. But before the rally, we looked at who had entered, and there's some good tour drives there. But with Stratty out and Luke not there wasn't the usual competitors that I compete against. But there was some really good four-wheel drives. So we thought, well, best we can do is try and win tour drive and maybe get to a podium. But I think the car just excelled on the roads, and with Justin having boost issues and coming back to rallying after a while, and Darren having issues right from the start, and Tim Clark also having some brake issues near the end, we're able to sort of hold on to him, but then he dropped out of the rally. It was really exciting, and we weren't getting to see times much with lack of service, but we got back and asked the boys at the HQ how'd we go, and yeah, they were hiding the results and were happy to tell us that we'd won, so we just couldn't believe it. It was really cool.
Yeah, good stuff. We spoke about the roads earlier in the podcast about obviously the old Rally Victoria roads, and I've recognised the corner from those old rallies. They're really sort of drivers' roads. Do you enjoy that sort of style of road there at that rally?
Oh, I couldn't believe how good the roads were. I say stage 2 was my favourite. At the time, the impression that gave me when I went over the finish line, I thought there's no better forest road in the country than that stage. But looking back on the Saturday night, we went back to Kate and Glenn's house to have a big movie screen. So on the projector, we played the in-car and with my team and stuff. And every stage had great bits and pieces in it. It was really, really cool. And yeah, we just had the engine noise of the car going because there was no pace notes. It's just route charts. But hearing, Datzilla at full noise and trying to read the road and what it was going to do. But that's where second pass was so much better, because I knew a little bit in my mind, and Kate knew to be on it with the road book. And we had a swept line, so the car just come alive, and we had some good Pirellis left over from Midder, which really helped us as well when the wetter conditions come right at the end of the rally.
Yeah, really nice. You mentioned there about reading the road. Obviously, it was a road book event. There's certain things that you want to pick up on when you're trying to read that road. I know a tree line and stuff is something that I've noted previously. What is something that you really focus on when you're trying to read that road, as really you don't know what's coming ahead?
I think I try and keep my eyes looking as far down the road as possible. Really read ahead and assess the situation. I was teaching this to Gandhi today, as well as surface changes. That's super important. And the road we were using today in my test track, there was moisture coming through the road where the shadows were, and where the sun was, the road's quite dry. So how you can attack and break in those shadows where the moisture is and the grips in the road is different to, say, the apex where it's going to be dry and loose. So there's a lot of things to calculate, but once you do it enough, it's very natural. But the big thing is the route chart. You don't want to get one of those things wrong, because you'll come unstuck. So the first pass of the stages, we keep quite a bit up our sleeve. And by saying that, I mean, drive a little bit conservative. And if you get through nice and clean, the second pass of those roads of the 4 stages like we had on the weekend, you can really start to push hard and capitalise on the mistakes you made from the first pass, because you can never make up lost time, but you can really improve on a time by being smoother and more consistent.
You've done a lot of rallying with both route charts and pace notes, clearly. There's people who have preferences, people who are quite vocal in their preferences, obviously. Do you have a preference, or do you just, I guess, drive to what events are there?
Yeah, exactly like what you finished with there, because this year there's only 2 route charted rallies and then 3 pace noted in the Victorian Championship. But I think if people say, oh, route charts are dangerous, I don't think they are if you drive them how they're designed to be driven. You've got to drive more conservative, got to read the road, drive within yourself. And pace notes, you need to do that as well. But the pace note, you've got a description for every corner, so you can drive more on the limit. And that's down to each individual team, how they take that. But I think with route charts, there's less preparation needs to go into the event, which also helps with, family businesses and things that people run and time away from home and work and so on. We're able to drive to that rally Friday, rally Saturday, drive home Sunday. It's casual, it's comfortable, and it's good fun. Whereas if that rally was pace noted, we would have had to go there Thursday. So it's just that extra day. So I think it's a good mix and a good balance. And to learn to drive fast, I think it's very important to learn on route charts as well, because you learn reading the craft of the road as well.
Yeah. It's the 20th of April as we speak now. There's a big gap in between rounds of the state championship. I think you're planning on doing a couple of rounds in New South Wales, or at least travelling north for one event. What do you do in between, I guess, now and late August, when the next state round comes and also the ARC comes as well?
Yeah, well, things like today, helping Gandhi, I got to drive his car for 5 laps. So that was really good. It keeps you sharp. And just thinking about the advice to give a driver, and especially a young driver, I think that's as important as driving, because you're thinking about, okay, what can I tell this person they need to do to change their driving style to make the car adapt or get around that corner faster? So I'll probably do a little bit of driver tuition. This Sunday, there's a drive day in Canberra with Hyundai. I'm doing that. I'll go to Rally Queensland with Gandhi. I can't go to Perth, but we're doing a few things, some testing at the track. I want to go to Nissan Night Movers and do a road closure, tick that off the list. So there's a few things. We're going to do some upgrades to the car and do some testing. So it definitely won't be quiet time, that's for sure. And then we've got a baby during September, so I'm still not sure if I'll do the second half of the season. I'm just trying to pump out lots of stuff now, because the second half of the year is going to be really busy at home as well.
Yeah, busy all around, but I think that's what a lot of people enjoy. So, yeah, you might be able to fit it in. Who knows? Craig Breen unfortunately passed away last week. You spent some time with him in the WRC Academy. Firstly, what are your memories of Craig, I guess, broadly, and how did you take the news?
Yeah, it still really hasn't sunk in. And similar to when Ken Block passed at the start of the year, because you see these people so much on social media, unless you go to a rally and they haven't turned up, it's really hard to believe that they're not around anymore. And Craig being 2 years younger than me, that's a bit of a shock as well because he's got so much of his life still to live. Like he doesn't even have a young family yet. So it's really disappointing and such a shame. And these new rally cars are so safe. It's the last thing we thought would have happened. It sounds like an absolute freak accident, which can happen. And yeah, it's just a real shock to the whole rallying community. And now everyone needs to stick together and get through this period. And I've got a few really good memories of rallying against Craig in that first year, but he just was such a fierce competitor, and you could tell right from the first stage that he was going places.
Mm. You were only 22 when you were doing most of that season. He was, as you say, a couple of years younger. You obviously, as a similar age bracket, you would have connected on, I guess, a number of levels. In that academy season, did you get to know him and I guess the other people in the group well?
Yeah, Craig actually won Rally Star Driver, just like myself and Molly had won. So we were sort of teammates within the academy. There were 6 Rally Star Driver cars. The first rally was Portugal, and I remember we could get a point per stage win. And Craig was a fierce competitor. He was going to win every stage if he could. But that's probably what was catching him out at the start of the season. He'd be crazy fast on a stage, but then he'd run off the road or break the car or something would happen. And I remember getting through a Rally Sardinia and going past one of his wheels on the stage, not knowing it was his at the time, but this wheel and tyre was in the middle of the road. And we were in a bit of a battle with Craig because we'd both had issues the day before, super rallied at the same time. So there were seconds between us. And as the story goes, we had to do about 180 kilometres transport. And the rule in the WRC was that you had to return to service with 4 wheels on the car. Well, Craig only had 3 wheels. So him and Gareth ratchet strapped the wheel to the back of the car where it's supposed to be. But because it was ratchet strapped there, it couldn't turn. They dragged this Fiesta all the way back to service, left a black mark on the bitumen the whole way, basically, and then got it back in. And, the stewards are scratching their heads and wondering what to do. But there wasn't much they could do because the rule said it had to be 4 wheels on the car. It didn't say they had to be turning. So he was a quick thinker and witty like that and was able to get himself through situations. And that's what I really learnt fast about Craig.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he struggled early in that academy year because Egon Cower had an amazing start to the year. And it was really weird. I look back on the academy and really it was only the first 2 legs of the WRC that you guys did. So it was a bit of a weird thing that you did the 2 days of rallying, but then you had the Sunday to go and watch stages, go and reflect on how you went. But I guess that leaves time to catch up with those sort of people.
Yeah, it does. And the academy was structured so you were there to learn, a bit like driving school. So the Sunday we'd have classroom interaction and, talk about what you could improve and, have a bit of a laugh about like what had happened to Craig in Sardinia. But it was fierce and we're all young, but everyone wanted to win because there was a €500,000 prize packet on whoever could win, and there's not really anything for second or third place. So Craig really had his eyes set on winning that, and I've got a little bit of a story about how it come down. You mentioned Egon there. He'd won the first 3 events in a row, I think, even though Craig had really been the fastest competitor. He wasn't consistent with winning, and the last rally was Rally GB. And the first stage was Bills Wells around the tarmac coastline on gravel tyres. And I just re-listened to a podcast the other day that Craig did with Bex Williams from WRC. And it reminded me of this story that it's sort of the main thing that sticks in my mind about Craig. And he had to win I think 19 of the 21 stages or 17 of the 19 stages. Basically, he could only drop 2 stages. He had to win all the other stages and win the rally to win this 500,000 euros. So you would, odds are against him. You wouldn't bet him to win it.
Yeah.
So we start off, and there was we actually won the first stage because Craig had to sit on the start line for 45 minutes. Ogier or someone had an off on that stage.
Okay.
And it got held up. So we had nice warm tyres. So he was already 1 point down. And then later on in the rally, we'd done a drive shaft. We dropped out. Molly Taylor actually come through in the fog in the nighttime, and she bet Craig. So he was 2 stages down. He had to win every stage on the second day, which he did right down to the end, won every stage, come through and won the rally as well. So it's just incredible the fight he had and how much he loved rallying. He's so passionate about it.
It's really big pressure sort of thing when there's 500,000 euro on the line. You've got to win every stage because there's no second chances in that kind of situation. If he puts the wheel off and tears the wheel off, well, fair enough. He's got to win the stage. So there's sort of no reason to back off at all.
There wasn't. And it was funny him talking in the podcast the other day. No one had told him that Molly had won that stage in the fog. He just thought he'd won, and they were in the hospitality later on. And I remember being there because I was watching the live stages come in and stuff because my drive shaft had broken, and his dad told him that did you realise that Molly won that stage? And he nearly threw his dinner plate across the room. It was so funny to see his reaction because you just never would have bet the money on him that you could win, 17 out of the 19 stages. Just incredible. So I knew it was very similar racing against Craig and Alf and Evans. They were fiercely fast competitors, and you could see there was only one direction they were going, and that was to top a WRC, and they were both similar in their nature to get there, but different style of drivers. Alfred was more, I think, he'd only win a rally by 20 seconds because he knew you could back off and damage your car, whereas Craig at the start had to win every stage and be flat out, and that was sort of catching him out. But by the end of the year, he seemed to be really consistent and on it and realised that you didn't have to drive flat out to win.
Was it just his out-and-out speed that set him apart from the others that were in the WRC Academy?
Yeah, we learned during the year he'd done a lot of the testing for those R2s.
Yep.
And I think, between M Sport and himself, they'd done like 10,000 or 15,000 Ks developing that car. And Craig had done a lot of those Ks. So he really knew the car, whereas a lot of us coming in, I'd come from driving a Subaru. So there wasn't a lot of experience in two-wheel drive. But, that's the luck of the game, and it's how you use the tools you're given and what you can do with them the best. So he went on to, win that year, drive Super 2000 after that, and move on to, drive for Citroen and M Sport and Hyundai and WRC. So, yeah, he got a long way. It's just such a shame with what's happened now, but his legacy will be really strong. And especially his last couple of years, he's really showed how passionate he's been in rallying, and it hasn't mattered what he's driving, if it's his Group A Escort that he's got, or his dad's Metro, or an R5 or an R2. He just absolutely would drive the wheels off it and loved rallying. And that's, I'm a bit the same. It wouldn't matter what I'm driving. I love to drive cars and drive them fast and sideways. So we all have that within us. And yeah, it's just really sad time, but let's hope that WRC can pull through it.
That's it. I'm sure they will. And as we've seen from the tributes and the photos and stuff from Croatia Rally already, as when we record this, the tributes are going to be long and very fitting, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think the rally's doing some really nice touches. They've, just like they did with Ken Block, they've stopped the number 43 for the rest of the year being able to be used. 42 for Craig and 43 for Ken. And then they're doing a minute silence for Craig when he was supposed to come over the start ramp. There's a couple of things that I've heard now, and then Hyundai have done some special liveries. And I think a really nice touch today, I heard that Toyota were only nominating 2 cars for manufacturer points because Hyundai had done the same. So it shows how good, the respect between teams is, that another manufacturer fighting for wins and points and money on the line, they're willing to do that out of respect, which is really nice.
Are you a tea drinker? Did you share a tea with him at some point? He was very, very passionate on his tea, but do you come across as a tea kind of guy?
I certainly was at that age. Yeah, my family was heavily. I think my dad takes a 2-liter thermos to work and drinks it by lunchtime. So yeah, I was a tea drinker. Actually, I'm more into my cappuccinos nowadays, but happily have a tea. And even from like the young age, then it was a funny joke going around how much Craig loved his tea, and he was very plain with food, like Rhiannon actually is. It would be a steak and no gravy and just some chips to go with it, So he was a simple guy, but passionate about the sport we all love.
Yeah, as you say, he was simple, I guess, passionate, and he was just so unapologetic, which is really what comes across when you watch videos of him. And I'm sure it was the same for you when you were having dealings with him in those few years.
Yeah, exactly. And like he went through so much hardship after that academy year. When his co-driver and best mate Jaffa passed away in a rally crash as well with Craig. And I think the grit and determination he had in him to get back 3 weeks later and rally again. And he did that because the Jaffa's family was saying, no, this was his dream as well. He wanted to be a WRC driver. You go on and live that dream just like Jaffa wanted. That was quite amazing to see someone have that drive within them to be able to, carry the spirit of their friend with them and keep rallying. That was really special. And Craig's, quite an emotional guy, but I think that's a really nice touch to have in the end of stage interviews, because most rally drivers, they're a bit of a badass, or, they don't have much to say. It was a really good touch to see someone so emotional about their driving and the love of the sport. Like Craig said when he won the first stage at Sweden this year, he said he'd missed it so much, and everyone felt that with him along with that story,
That's it. Breno, thanks so much for sparing some time and for giving some memories on Craig and giving us an update of where you're at. Obviously a nice Victorian Championship win last weekend, and yeah, thanks again for sharing those memories, because it's nice to be able to get a feeling of who Craig was like and how it was to compete against him.
Yeah, thanks for the time, mate.